Good. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is James Jackson.
So we're going to get started about 2:35, James. It's just 2:32. Everybody's coming in.
Well, thank you very much. We haven't started yet. All right.
You might want to work on that introduction a little bit, you know?
I know. It wasn't
Wow.
enough.
I'm gonna work on it. Thank you, Maddie. Any suggestions are good suggestions. I say take them and run with them. In my life.
All right. Thank y'all for joining us. We're going to get started with the program at 2:35. All right, everyone. We're going to get started in about 60 seconds at 2:35.
Hey, panelists, this is the way I would like it done. If we could, you guys just turn your cameras off. You can hear me. I'll introduce you and then bring you in, and like that. Okay. Thank you.
All right, James, it's 2:35.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the producers of this series, the CLE series. My name is James Jackson. Good afternoon and welcome to Southern University Law Center. Today, we're going to be talking about the Music Modernization Act. We're going to bring in a few guests today who are going to give you an overview on this act that was signed into law in 2018. Specifically, we're going to talk about section or title 1 of that law, which is called the MLC, or the Mechanical Licensing Collective. And we're very lucky today. We're going to bring in first Serona Elton, who is the head of educational partnerships at the MLC. Serona is the head of educational partnerships, an outstanding music professional herself. She has many years in the industry, having worked on the inside as well as in the educational sphere. She is a practicing lawyer too. She has a JD degree. She currently lives in Miami, Florida. She has worked as a consultant for Sony Entertainment, Universal Music. She worked inside at EMI. She is one of those individuals who knows a little bit about everything. And we're very fortunate to have her here today to share some of her knowledge about the MLC, which takes place or kicks off or will make all of our lives a little easier starting January the 1st, 2021. Hello, Serona, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. And thank you so much for that generously kind introduction. I'm thrilled to be here joining you today. It's going to be such a great session. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, we're glad you could take time to be with us. What we wanted to do was to clue all of the practicing and the soon to be practicing attorneys in on this process. It is very important for them. It's a significant change in copyright law, as we all know. The Music Modernization Act, as many know, are 3 separate acts, actually. And Title I, which is your focus, is the one that we're going to discuss today. It is clearly going to change the face of data. I love the process that you guys have been going through, introducing it to the public and the professionals. In our community, there have been, I would say, in the last 4 months, no less than 25 seminars or such, maybe more. I know I've attended at least 10. We're lucky today to have on our panel some other professionals who we'll bring in later, but you, as the head of education for the MLC, you've helped lay out how this is taught so that the practicing professionals will be able to implement it in real world practice. So can you just tell us a little bit more about it and how you think it will, your organization will be able to execute this? It's a big undertaking.
Sure, it's my pleasure. And it's funny, as you mentioned how many of these seminars you've attended, I'm starting to think we need to develop like a badge system. To be like, you have a master's degree in MLC webinars, you know? It's really impressive. So yeah, I'd be very happy to give, to start off with a little bit of an overview. And then I know we're going to get into all kinds of operational questions, especially with the other guests on the panel today. So some of those things I'll wait till we get into those with them. So just a bit of a timeline. Let's start with a timeline so everybody knows where we're at in that timeline. So the MMA was signed into law in October 2018. There was then a process involved in actually a couple of different entities applied to be designated as the MLC, and that decision was made in July of 2019. And since July 2019, the MLC has been busy working to build out its staff. You know, it's everything from the customer experience people who will answer the phone when you call, right up to the CEO. You know, but it's like when you start a new company, you have to start from scratch. So hiring our staff and building up our technology systems so that they're ready to go. So what will happen on January 1st is that digital music services will January 1st be able to obtain a blanket license from us. But we are already up and running. We've been up and running for a while now. I actually came on board myself in March of this year. And, we've been building a system. We have a live portal. We've been inviting people through an invitation process up until this point to join the MLC and get a login to our systems. And very soon that will be very broadly available to everybody who should join. So even though January 1st is that license availability date, that's not really when we're opening our doors. Our doors are open already. So that's why we're so happy to be talking to people right now. So a quick overview of how it's going to work. Like, what is this thing, right? So the overall process, and anybody who's ever been involved in any music licensing, especially in mechanical music licensing, knows it's complicated. So I'm going to simplify to get us off to a starting place, and then we'll go as deep as you guys want. So in a simple way, digital music services will be obtaining a blanket license from us. What makes that different, why the blanket is so special and important, right? The MMA created this blanket. It was never available before. What we had before the MMA was record companies, digital music services really needed to analyze and secure rights for each individual work from each individual copyright owner. That's a simplified statement, but at the end of the day, it was a work by work, share by share licensing scheme. That's how you did it. The blanket license now says to a digital service, you only have to secure one license from the MLC. There's a bunch of rules you have to comply with. It's not like, one and done and that's super easy, but it changes the way the licensing itself is administered. So digital services, and let me be clear, actually, not all digital services,
right?
Not every kind of digital service needs a mechanical license. So let's clear out what doesn't. Video, nothing to do with mechanicals. Video, YouTube, TikTok, they're not involved in mechanical licensing. They do not get a license from the MLC. So video, not us. So now we're talking audio only, but not all audio streaming is the same. So there's actually, if you think of it like this, there's 4 kinds of ways a consumer, at least 4 kinds of ways a consumer would interact with audio streaming. And 3 of these ways involve a mechanical license, but one of them doesn't. You know, it's like that old game show, like which one of these is not like the others, right? Services that offer interactive streaming, like Spotify, Apple Music, you know, actually Pandora has a version of this kind of thing. Amazon has a version of this thing. Interactive streaming. So you as a consumer, you get to go on, you get to find your favorite track, you get to listen to it 10 times in a row, okay? That's interactive streaming. There's also something that is very kind of, you know, most people don't even know it exists. It's called the limited download. Well, in those interactive streaming services, back when people used to fly all the time, you might have taken a flight and said, I'm not going to pay for that expensive Wi-Fi. Like, I don't want to pay for that, but I want to listen to my playlist while I'm on the plane. So let me check a little button in my music app that says offline listening. So what that's actually accomplished in the background is through this limited download. It's actually downloaded to your device, but it's not like, you know, permanent downloads. Remember iTunes? It's not like a permanent download where you can move the file around and, you know, it's limited. So those need a mechanical. Limited downloads need a mechanical. Permanent downloads, iTunes, Amazon, they need a mechanical. But what does not need a mechanical are what's called non-interactive streams. So this is sort of traditional Pandora radio. You know, you can pick your favorite station, or it can create a station for you based on your likes and stuff. You might be able to skip a little bit, thumbs up, thumbs down, but you don't get to pick exactly what you're going to listen to when you want. Those are called non-interactive services, and they do not involve mechanicals. So certain kinds of digital services will be able to get this blanket license. Interactive streams, limited downloads and permanent downloads, okay? 3 kinds. They'll be able to get this blanket license starting in January. So what will then happen is they will be reporting royalties to the NLC every month. The royalty rates for those is set by something called the Copyright Royalty Board, call that the CRB, Copyright Royalty Board. It's a 3 judges panel that sets this rate every so many years. Sets a number of rates. This is one of them. So digital services will be paying the statutory royalty rates, the compulsory statutory rates set by the CRB. We're going to get into acronym city here, folks, so bear with me, right? CRB, MLC, DSP, oh my gosh. So they're going to report those compulsory mechanical royalties to the MLC on a monthly basis. We will take information coming from the services, and generally they are reporting to us sound recording information. They're saying this sound recording was streamed this many times in this month, right? We have to match that sound recording information to musical works information we have in our database. So the database that we have been busy building and that is going to be publicly available, everybody will be able to see the musical works information in there, who owns what share. That's all required by the law for that database to be public, which is a really important and very cool game changer, right? So that database will be publicly available. We have to match the data in that database about musical works to recording data coming to us from the digital services so that we can pay the people who are entitled to receive mechanical royalties for those musical works, right? So that's it. That's like in a nutshell, right? We grant these licenses, we gather royalty information from the digital services, we match it up to musical works information, and then we pay people. And the last thing I'll just say at the end of my high-level summary is the kinds of people we pay. So this is really important. It's really confusing. It's really different than what a performing rights organization does. And it's different from what Sound Exchange does. And by the way, we're not replacing any of them. People are like, where does the MLC fit in the landscape? What are you replacing? I'm like, nothing. We're adding to the landscape. No one's going away from the landscape. We're just adding. We're a new party in the landscape, but we're not replacing anybody else. And so for PROs, all songwriters have to join a PRO, right? Even if you're signed to a music publisher.
If I could just jump in real quick. When we talk about PROs, folks, for those uninitiated out there, they're basically in America, there's 4 of them. There's ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and what is it, GBR.
GMR, yeah.
GMR, yes. So those guys, and then, I mean, there's tons, there are societies, if you will. They're very important. They're for the initial title registration of a song after a song's been copywritten. And a lot of times what you find are people title register songs before they copyright it. So which is a Mr. Music publisher faux pas that I always say, copyright your work before you do anything else with it. But I just wanted to insert that for the uninitiated, because when we talk about PROs, we talk about sound exchange, we talk about all of the other societies that are out there, or collection agencies. What the MLC is trying to do is to fill a gap. In the past, you would have, if you've been in the music business for more than 5 years, you've heard of Harry Fox. HFA, they were the ones that were issuing the licenses and doing the notices of intents and all that you would deal with, where the filing was done. The MLC is the new kid on the block. They're a startup that's essentially trying to fill that gap and give transparency and an essential database that will register your sound recorded works.
No, your musical works.
Your musical works.
I'm sorry,
not your sound recordings, but your musical works. Yes. See, terms are important. Your musical works.
So
yes.
True.
So
true.
There you go.
So true.
All right. So go ahead on.
Thank
I'm sorry.
you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No, that's so important, because it's true. I mean, I'm sure we have people on this session that range from people who are like veterans, been doing it longer than you and me, to people who are still in school and even learning what this means, right? We have everybody on. So there are certain kinds of collective management organizations or societies, as you said, where every songwriter needs to join, or every recording artist needs to join. There are some where, it's not really an option. I mean, the choice is get paid or don't get paid, right? And you have to pick one, and you have to sign up. So the MLC is a bit different. So we generally are paying people that fall into 3 categories, if you want to think of it like that. Generally, music publishers and publishing administrators. That's going to be the majority of people that are our members that we're going to be paying out. They're music publishers, generally speaking, or companies that do publishing administration. The second category, though, are songwriters who are acting as their own music publisher. So the fact that they're a songwriter, that's cool, but it's more important that they've got that hat on. They're wearing the publishing hat. They're acting as their own publisher. So they're joining us because they are a publisher, which is different than joining us just because they're a songwriter, like they would for those other organizations you mentioned. So if you're a songwriter that's handling your own publishing, then you are essentially a publisher for our purposes, and you'll be joining the MLC and we'll be paying. The third category are organizations that are mechanical rights organizations, is what we are. They're based outside the United States. So let's say you're a songwriter in the UK or a publisher in the UK. And publisher in the UK, and they have a mechanical rights organization in the UK. You might have authorized that organization to collect your mechanicals all over the world for you. And if that's the case, they would be registering your works with us, collecting money from us, and paying that back to you in the UK, if that's how you want to go about, arranging it. So generally speaking, at the simplest level, we pay people who are entitled to receive the mechanical royalties, generally the parties who would be doing that licensing, directly dealing with a licensee. And then they pay the parties that they are obligated to pay. So we're going to pay a lot of music publishers. They're going to pay the songwriters they have contracts with.
I think
as opposed to us paying all songwriters directly.
Right. I think that explanation right there is about as succinct as it could get. And I'm glad that we have you here today. In the real world, out there, past the educational theoretical world that we're giving you guys the overview, in the real world, there exist attorneys who practice every day, who deal with these issues every day. And we're very pleased today to have joining us Matty Finkelstein. Matthew is a partner. There he is. He's a partner over at Ackerman Law, which is one of the most respected law firms in the industry in multiple areas of practice. But Matty happens to be in the intellectual property area. He wears that hat and he does lots of things. I'm not really sure that I could cover it in an introduction other than to say he is my hero and my Superman. And he's one of the reasons why I got so interested in the mechanical licensing collective and the MMA. I heard him talking about it on the panel, asking a lot of thoughtful questions almost a year ago. He was on with Sylvia Moy and a few other folks, and it was a great panel. And it really piqued my interest. And I've devoured almost every written word that I could find by him ad nauseum. I've sought to bring him involved, to get him involved with some of my clients. But Maddie is a partner, as I said, at a very well-respected law firm, Ackerman Law in New York City. He had his education at St. John's University. He is a member of the New York Bar. And I'm very happy to call him a good friend and a great guy. He took out his time to join us here today. Maddie, would you like to add what you've heard Serona talking about here today and give us your overview as a practicing lawyer on what you think the MLC will bring to the game as a startup?
Absolutely. James, thank you for the introduction and for inviting me onto this panel, and thank you to Southern University. It's great to be here. So to me, the MLC is really groundbreaking from the perspective of one of the challenges that's really plagued the music business since the internet came along and became a method of distribution for music is lack of a uniform way to communicate information about the ownership interests and songwriter interests in musical compositions. There still is no database that has been a tested database with all of the information that anybody who wants to get a license about any song can simply go to and say, okay, I know who the songwriters are, who all the publishers are, and now I know who to go and get a license from. Because if you think about one song could have 3 or 4 songwriters,
right?
And each of those songwriters could have their own respective publishers, right? So for one song, you might need to obtain a license from 4 different publishers. Well,
exactly.
How does somebody do that? Especially, how does somebody like a digital music service that has tens of millions of recordings offered, how do they go about on a song by song basis with 100% accuracy licensing the use of songs? So we got to a point in the music business where streaming income became the majority source for revenue, more than 50%, but the licensing process for the major component of streaming income being the interactive services that Serona had described earlier was very challenging, because you had digital music services paying companies like HFA or Music Reports to send in individual notices of intent for each and every song. So literally billions of notices of intent being filed. And if you think about it, there's lots of risk associated with that, because a title of a song is not unique.
Right.
So, right, how many songs might be called "I Love You"? And so, how does how do you know? How does a service know with certainty, which recording of "I Love You" by which band, and therefore, by which songwriters, is being streamed on its service? So, the industry ran into a situation where digital music services that were really using good faith efforts to try to identify the songs being offered through their services and get a compulsory license by way of sending in individual notices of intent to use the music, were sued for tens of millions, if not in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars,
right.
because they served notices of termination, sent in notices of termination. Maybe the name of the title was right, but it was for the wrong publishers, the wrong songwriters. So in terms of wanting to have a robust marketplace with lots of players in it, offering music to the public, that's a deterrent if someone wants to jump into the marketplace and could be subject to lawsuits when they're trying to do the right thing. On the flip side, as a songwriter or a publisher, well, how does somebody know whether their music's being licensed and used by a service? So those billions of notices of intent to use that I talked about were made accessible online for searching on a manual basis. So who has the time to go through that and search to figure out, oh, well, that's my song. That's the wrong publisher listed or the wrong contact information. So now let me get in touch with each and every service and then try to seek my money. So
Matt, if I could just jump in real quick and say to you that point right there in a nutshell is why I'm happy that the MLC has been developed, because it was almost like every Monday morning I was just getting my popcorn just to see who filed a lawsuit. And I've been in a position where I've been asked to, come in and be an expert witness or talk about things. It was hilarious to me to watch a 400-pound gorilla or 800-pound gorilla like Spotify come in. They just didn't care. They just put everything up. They like sue us. We're just going to keep licensing as much as we can, and if you don't approve the license, we're just going to get it played anyway. And that there's tons of pending litigation regarding some of the early actions that they've took that I'm sure will be settled. But they were forging ways. So tech was leading the way for the industry, and the industry was playing catch up. Is that essentially what you were saying there? That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, traditionally the copyright law has been a step, if not multiple steps, behind technology. So this is the Music Modernization Act is an effort to bring us up to speed, if I can say that, or close to it, and really a way of making it as close to seamless as possible between the different players, the digital music services, the publishers, the songwriters, and because the blanket license, it's not just a blanket to cover the works, but I think another key aspect of it, it's a blanket liability insurance policy. So that as long as you're doing what's required by the license, the digital music services will have protection from the infringement actions that they otherwise would have been subject to. So that should ideally encourage new players to come into the market because they don't have that same threat of infringement actions, as long as they join in and pay the fees required to participate in the mechanical licensing collectives blanket license program. And existing services should also feel more comfortable to infuse more funds. And because of the inefficiency that existed before, and it's still largely there right now, there are funds that are unclaimed.
Right.
Different people will tell you different amounts. Some people will tell you maybe there's a couple $100 million. Others will say, well, it's close to $1 billion. Maybe Serona knows the right answer. But so the idea is,
no, I don't.
Okay, yeah. So the MLC will help for those existing funds. The MLC is going to help to try to help to sort it out and see who that money should be going to. But in the future, as there's new licensing activity, the idea is to shrink down the so-called unmatched royalty accounts, so that the royalties will be flowing through the right publishers or songwriters if they're songwriters that have control of their own publishing interests. So it could really be a game changer in that respect, in terms of the right people being paid money that they weren't previously paid, or more money, because now we have the idea of a match, right, with the services being able to pay royalties for the correct songs, which have the correct identification in terms of who the what parties control the rights in those songs. So
I think that's huge, Matt.
Yeah,
I think that along with the fact of the uncollected funds that are in each account out there from each major publisher and recording company, that is tremendous. As a person who works in this industry every day, I get tons of calls about people who can't collect funds, and it's about the data now. It's about the data being right, of course, and that's what the MLC will hope to accomplish. And I think that you as a practicing attorney who could talk about your POV dealing with your clients, you don't have to name names, but if you could give us an overview of just how you think this is going to change the game for some of your folks.
Sure. So one aspect where I think it will make it easier for assertion of rights is clients who are at the point in their careers where they've had success in terms of their songs being hit songs over the years. Maybe they're evergreens, that they've been successful for decades, but they've been controlled by music publishing companies who pay really low royalty rates. And so as everybody on the panel knows, the copyright law gives authors and creators or their successors a second bite at the apple to recapture the United States copyrights after a certain period of time, depending upon when an agreement was signed. And with the MLC being a single place to have a database of who controls what rights, it should be easier for an author who's recapturing rights and then needs to let the world know, essentially, I'm the new person in town. I actually now own my songs, and I'm going to get the revenue, all of it, or else maybe I have an administrator who's helping out. The MLC hopefully will be an easy way for my clients to be able to update the various digital music services to know, pay my client instead of the original publisher.
Well, so I think that's outstanding.
Yeah. So that's one example there where I see it really being good in the real world. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do now, if you guys will allow me to, is to bring in our next guest, who is a very learned student of Maddie Finkelstein. He works with Maddie Finkelstein over at Ackerman Law. He's a young attorney who is a Harvard graduate, who graduated from Stanford Law School. His name is Jackie Robinson. He's an outstanding practitioner in the area of entertainment law, focusing on intellectual property, contract law. He works a lot with indie artists, writers, producers, as well as working with heirs of families and estates who are seeking to recapture their rights, that much in the area that Maddie Finkelstein just described. His name is Jackie Robinson. Jackie, welcome to the panel. We're happy to have you here. You're working out in New York for Ackerman Law. Would you like to chime in on the conversation thus far?
Of course. Thank you, James, for the warm introduction, and thank you, Serona and Matt, for laying the groundwork. You did a wonderful job explaining what's going on with MLC, which I really believe is really important and will actually change a lot for artists that I care a lot about, who are the independent artists and the singer-songwriter, rapper types that are coming up and don't quite have all the resources that a big publishing company might have. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Georgia, and before law school, I worked at Google, where I was kind of a data geek at the time. So data and this whole theme of data being the MLC is very important to me. And then I went to law school, and at that point I had to decide what I wanted to do. And I tell this story a lot because I think it's very, it's quite interesting. But way back in the early 2000s, I was watching, there's a show on VH1 called Behind the Music. And particularly there's an episode with TLC, right? And everyone's question during 2000 was, how is this band, which had sold, 15 million records and was touring worldwide and, all these amazing things, how are they going bankrupt? Like, what was going wrong? And, they sit there on the couch, I believe at one point, was it Left Eye explaining it? She's like, look, there are 100 points on the album and we got 8. And she just breaks it down about how they essentially took home each $50,000 a year for the 2 years that our albums were making, tons of millions of dollars. And at that point, it sort of sold me into this entertainment law practice because I, wanting to be the person that, fights for the little man or the little person or woman, whoever it might be, I wanted to take on that mantle. And I joined Matt Finkelstein and our other partner, Ross Cherub, who are very passionate about songwriters and artists who really have in their past lives been shafted in many ways by the people that have represented them. And so a lot of what we do sometimes, we're not representing more independent publishers, is helping those artists and, songwriters reclaim some of their rights, whether it be by contract or whether it be by the notices of termination that are served under the copyright law, or whatever it may be. It just, finding a way that we can help them, add value to what they have and to sometimes restore value to what they had. So with that, I'm going to turn more to why I think, the MLC is quite important for clients that I like to represent. Particularly, this all comes into the context of how the music business has changed so much in the past, say 20 to 30 years. Like when T-Boz and Chili and Left Eye were a thing, people are buying CDs. Their CDs are flying off the shelves of, Circuit City, all these places that no longer exist anymore, Virgin. And today, people who are independent artists, by and large, and even people who are not independent artists, by and large, on the recording side, get their revenues from streaming. So streaming has certainly become king or queen, however you like it. And as a result, there's a lot of money flowing through streams, and people are wondering, how do I capture all of that money? How am I, as an artist or as a songwriter, or as both, capture all the money that is being made by my streams? Now, as Matt and Serona and James mentioned before, the MLC, or I guess currently, it's quite a mixed mash of marketplace. There are many services that if you're a songwriter, you go to and say, could you go and collect my mechanical royalties that are earned from streams of my songs? And you have to compare the services and find out which one is better for you and which rates are this and that. And so it's not as simple, and you're not quite confident. And I say it's kind of like the paradox of choice, because even on the performance side of things, where we have performance royalties by BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC, we have clients all the time asking us, well, I'm an ASCAP member, should I go over to BMI or should I switch to CSAC? And it's always this, am I missing out? Is the grass greener on the other side? And with the MLC, it kind of takes away that choice for you and streamlines it all for you. So you have a centralized place where you can go and register and make sure that you're getting paid the royalties that are set by the Copyright Royalty Board. And the off the top amount, I believe, and Serona will correct me, is paid by these digital service providers and not you as a songwriter, which is not the case in a lot of places.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
No, go ahead. And so you get that benefit, and then another benefit for these independent writers is that even if they're, and we'll get more into this later, even if they're not signed up on day one, the MLC is unique in that it is going to hold royalties for a period of 3 years, in which you have to register your songs correctly. And at that point, if they're not registered, that money goes into a pool that gets dispersed, I guess, pro rata to everyone else. So you have a little bit of time, to make sure the data is accurate, but at least there is a repository of data that has been standardized and vetted, and you're able to yourself go to it and say, well, these are my songs, XYZ is incorrect, and submit something to correct it. Whereas currently, that place really doesn't exist. I mean, people rely mostly on the PROs being asked at BMI, CSAC, et cetera, today for data regarding songs, and particularly songwriters and publishers, and at times Harry Fox Agency. But, in terms of it being correct or, something being not updated, who knows? And so now
that is an interesting, having worked inside at music publishers, establishing protocols on how we would want to receive data when I worked inside as a music publisher. I remember John McKellen, who, God rest his soul, was the former president of MCA Music Publishing and worked a long time at Leeds Music, Leeds Levy. He the original ATV music deal with Michael Jackson and his company, helped set up My Jack Music. He was, God rest his soul, a thought leader and one of those people who believed that the data was everything. He assisted us early on in establishing what he called the song information sheet. And it became it was the Bible for me. Like, I wouldn't let people leave the studio until the song information sheet was done. And essentially, I believe that the MLC is a reflection of how important the data is. You got to, connect to collect, if you will, fill out the information the correct way. Oh, that's an MLC statement. So I borrowed it from them. I've been paying attention to the MLC from day one. It's very important to me because of all the reasons that all of you have stated. I really wanted Southern University to get on this plane and express it to the practicing or the soon to be practicing attorneys about how important it is in this space, because there's, as Maddie said earlier, there's a conversation taking place about just how much uncollected money there is out there, because this will be an essential tool, I believe, to assist in those uncollected spaces. And it could be, life-changing for a lot of older artists that are out there. If you're in New Orleans and you're in the, or parts of Eastern Texas, and Zydeco music, there's a ton of old Zydeco artists who haven't seen a dime, and if they can get on board with this will help them collect some money. It doesn't matter what genre of music. And the thing about music is that it doesn't have borders. It doesn't respect borders. Music is worldwide, and MLC is going to be reaching out worldwide collecting money. And I think that that's impressive. Am I correct in that?
Well, let me. So it's correct one way, but not the other way. So what is correct is when music is on Spotify in the US and the songwriter or the publisher is based in, Latin America or anywhere, right? Anywhere on the planet, where that songwriter who's acting as their own publisher or that publisher is based, they will be able to get that money from the NLC. Either they can join us directly or their local Mechanical Rights Society will get it from us. What we are not allowed to do is the other direction. We are not allowed to collect mechanicals from Spotify in Europe, for example, or from the French Mechanical Collecting Society on behalf of US publishers and writers. So we're not allowed to collect from outside the US and pay our members in the US. We're only allowed to collect from US digital services, essentially where the activity happens in the US, even if the company is based somewhere else, collect from US operating services and pay the rights holders wherever they are. So it goes one way, but not the other way.
But isn't it true that most of the rest of the world already have mechanical licensing societies or collectives in place. And I know that in
Thank
Europe,
you.
there's a big to-do happening right now. I think what is it, Title 17 in Europe, or is it Title 15? I can't recall.
I think it's 17.
That is trying to be approved by all of the different. I know that I was at the IMCP recently, one of their conferences, and they were talking about the fact that they were trying to streamline it to be in line the same way the MLC was being developed in America. And I thought that was great. I was like, wow, the MLCs are now a leader. And you know, I laugh because the US is the world's largest music market, if you will. But it seems like we've always lagged behind in these areas of copyright and copyright protections, if you will, in terms of, it just feels that way, I guess, because I'm always trying to get people paid. And that's ultimately what this is about, getting the songwriter paid. And Maddie, can you just give us an overview, like your thoughts on, with all of these things going in place? I know, you know, there's a person I really respect, the chancellor of this law school. He has this thing that he says to me, and I've heard him say it at least 20 times, Chancellor Pierre. He says, proof of concept. Everybody has a concept and idea about how they think things are going to work, and you have to prove it. So Maddie, what are you looking to see happen with the MLC to prove that it really does work?
I'm looking to see, I think really the proof in the pudding will have to do with the unclaimed funds and the disbursement of those that exist now that are being handed over by the services to the MLC, and then going forward, making sure that there's really, compared to today, a small percentage of the funds, because that's if that doesn't happen, then I think you could say the publishers and the songwriters got an unfair bargain by giving blanket protection to the services if the people who own the music, right, or who are administering the music aren't getting paid properly. So to me, I think that's going to be key, but I think we all have to be patient because it's not going to happen overnight. The system's just getting up and running. The Copyright Office issued some regulations for how digital music services will work with the MLC, but they're not final regulations, they're interim regulations because of the recognition that, well, we've got to get there, try and see. And just like any other business, there might be some bumps in the road and flaws. So let's revisit it afterwards and see what are the proper regulations, the rules that everybody should be following. What's the proper data points that should be exchanged? And so I think we'll see. Right now, I think my view is that there's one particular in the whole food chain here. There's one actor that I think needs to be required to step it up a little bit more in terms of the information that they collect and provide to digital music services. And I think that's record companies. So I'm hopeful that we'll see, as regulations are become finalized in the next couple of years, that it will require for better exchange of data from the record companies, meaning that an obligation will have to be put on the digital music services to then in turn say to their customers who are feeding recordings to them, the required elements that can then be passed, because this relates to a digital music service reporting into the MLC what music's being used. And so if you look at the interim regulations right now and the back and forth that went on between the different constituents who were evaluating the proposed regulations, you had the digital music services sort of pushing back a little bit because of the challenges presented by getting information from record companies. So not that I'm anti-record companies or anything like that, but I think it's just the reality that I think that needs to be improved upon.
Well, I think that's a good point, and I think it's very valid. And Serona is someone who has worked inside at a record company, dealt with actually mechanical licensing, and so all of that should be made easier for the record companies with the advent of the MLC. Wouldn't you agree, Serona? I mean, that's what I would hope.
Well, it has to do with the stages in the supply chain. I know that sounds really businessy, but there's a supply chain involved, right? And that supply chain, for those watching, right, that's the process from essentially the source of goods all the way to the consumer. And so, you know, from the song being written and information being captured about the song through the recording process to then how that recording ends up being distributed through a record company or for a do-it-yourself artist through some of these digital aggregators like CD Baby or TuneCore, DistroKid, all the way to the service. There's a supply chain, and different parties along the way contribute bits of information to what continues to move after them, right? And there's, you know, the MLC is not able to wave a magic wand and solve all supply chain problems. You know, the creation of the MLC is not going to solve everything. That's just a broad blanket statement. But, you know, if I put my hat on from a bit of my former life, you know, there are challenges around the record companies even getting a full set of identifiers, for example, you know, about a musical work before they then release it. You know, for example, the unique identifier that might be assigned to the musical work called the ISWC, those may not have been assigned yet. All the writers on that work may not have yet signed up with the PRO, and so they don't have their identifiers yet, right? So, you know, creativity, it happens based on, you know, the passion involved, and it gets created and off it goes. And then sometimes those involved in the creative process are like, I'll deal with the, you know, the data pieces later, right? And they don't want to be slowed down because a writer is like, oh, I still can't choose between ASCAP and BMI. I don't know, you know, so there are still challenges that exist. They're not going to go away tomorrow. You know, having been somebody who's been an advocate of data and identifiers and connecting these identifiers, like that, you know, 20 years of beating that drum. You know, I would love for identifiers to be assigned as early as possible in time, and then for them to just follow on downstream so that they're there across the board, so all these connections can be made. But I also know where the challenges are, and the challenges are usually not to do with technology. It's not because there's not a system to assign them. They're systems. It's people having to take certain steps, and there has to be, you know, incentives and disincentives to have people in the process take, you know, action at certain times. So,
well, I think
so some of that's not going to be fixed tomorrow.
Right. Right. I think
one other thing I just wanted to add. Sorry,
just
wanted to add really quick to Maddie's thing. I'm sorry. In terms of the, you know, have we been able to accomplish what we set out to do? And you'll see it with this unmatched data being pushed through. It is also the case, though, that the MLC is not spinning up a 100,000 strong army of people to find songwriters, right? Like, so if you are, you know, let's say you're an electronic music person, you know, you're a high school student, you're a college student, you created this amazing music in your bedroom and you pushed it up through TuneCore and it's on Spotify and no one's ever heard from you other than that, we can't find you to pay you. Like, we would love to pay you, but you have to come to us. Our job is to make it really easy to find us, to know who we are, where we are, and how do you sign up, and make it easy and hold your hand and get your stuff in there correctly and make sure you know how to do it and, you know, get your banking stuff set up. Like, come on, we want you. But if you're hiding out in your bedroom, we don't know how to find you, right? So there's different parties along the whole supply chain, and that includes those at the very beginning of it, songwriters and publishers and record companies, everybody all has their role to play in helping all this information get connected. And so it's not that all of the past behavior where people have perhaps not been as you know, assertive or as active as they should be in helping get the information correct, that they can't just stay that way and think it's all going to be fixed by the MLC. Everybody has to play their part.
I think that
Thanks for letting me go on. Sorry.
No, absolutely. It was important. And I want to add to it and say that, the connect to collect statement that you guys put out there is one of the best ones. It goes the easiest. It flows, and most of the songwriters and the people that you just described, that situation you described is about that guy in his bedroom making music. And I'm going to go back. I'm not going to say any names, but I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally. And there was a lot of young songwriters who created a whole genre of music. They called it Detroit techno, and they were making great music, and none of these guys were getting paid. And when I got started and I got them involved and got their stuff, title registered, copyright registered, none of that stuff had happened before I got involved with them. And all of a sudden they started making tons of money. And essentially what I'm trying to say is that they make the music to share with the world. That's their creativity, but also it's a business and they want to make that money. But what it does for guys like me and Jackie, if you will, it creates a cottage industry too for us to know that there's a source like this out here. We can go to these young songwriters, producers, and artists and say, let us help you. And we can port them to a new source, which I believe the MLC is, that will convince them that, hey, look, this has been signed into law. It's the best thing that Donald Trump ever put his name on. It's changing the landscape, and it's providing opportunity. There's tons of money out there that's, like you say, uncollected, but also the more efficiencies we have to get the money to the creativities, I believe we will see more creativity come from it. And so that's what I'm praying for and working towards. And this is the reason why I want to trumpet and say thank you to the MLC for, you guys had to fight. It was a selection process. I know for you guys to get established, there were tons of other people who put forward. I sat in on many of those with Harvey Mason Jr. and a few other people who I can think of who were touting different agencies and other people, and you guys came through. You put it together, and I really appreciate you being there, and I'm going to support you at every turn. So do the right thing, because if not, we can always just get torches and come for you.
I know you won't hold back. I know you won't.
Okay, Jackie, any last thoughts before we can see if I can't see if we have any questions from the audience. It looks like we don't, which is amazing.
Sure, I've won a couple more thoughts, I believe.
Okay.
So you mentioned kind of a call to action to everyone. This connect to collect. I suppose let's round it out for them. Maybe Serona can help us out. What does it mean today? What can I do today as, say, a publisher or a songwriter that is available to me on the MLC's website? And what comes on, on January 1st?
Yes. So what you can do today, firstly, if you had previously ever signed up your musical works with the Harry Fox Agency, you would have received an email invitation from us already to set up your member account and get your, get all logged in and everything. So if you're listening and you had already been signed up with the Harry Fox Agency and you haven't seen that email, check your spam, check your junk mail, it's there. But you don't have to wait for that, okay? Something that we've invited everybody to participate in right now is something called our Data Quality Initiative. We abbreviate that DQI. And all that's involved is you have to have some kind of spreadsheet, whether it's, Apple Sheets or whatever, Google Sheets, some kind of spreadsheet that has your song information in it. You have that, you will send that to us. We will run that against our database, because we're starting with a starter database. Like there was no way to stand up a brand new database from zero, from scratch, in the timeline that we've moved on. So the MLC went through this process and ended up selecting the Harry Fox Agency to be a vendor that provides us with a number of services, one of which was a starter database. So we've got some data in a starter database. And if you submit your data through this DQI initiative, we will compare it to everything in our database and give you back a report that says where what you have is not exactly what we have. Something's missing, or you say it's like this and our data says it's like that. It'll highlight for you exactly what you need to take action on, because either what we have is wrong or what you have is wrong, or one of us is missing something. So that's totally free. It's available to anybody. If you go to our website, and when I stop talking in a minute, I'll put a link in the chat as well. It's available to anybody to participate in right now. And actually, by the way, and I know this will be important to James, we've recently announced a number of different companies that we're working with that provide different rights holders with tools already, different technology tools and different services, where they are working with us to make that process, that data comparison I just said, even easier than it already is, and make it even easier. And so there's a company called Blocker, one called Exactuals, one called Music Data Services, and one called Tune Registry. If any of those ring a bell for you, you can go to their websites, contact them, find out more about exactly how that's going to work, because it's not the same for all of them. But they're all now partners in our data quality initiative to help really make it super efficient for the people that use their tools to compare their data to what's in our database, to get a jump on making sure everything is accurate.
Sorry about that. My dog is active.
No problem. And I'm going to put a link to the data quality initiative in the chat in just 1 second. I'm pulling it up now. But does that answer the question you were thinking? You were hoping for?
That's exactly it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome. And here I'm putting it in the chat.
While you're doing that, Serona, I'll just point out that it seems to me like the digital music services are buying into this. And what I mean by that is I've heard anecdotally from some of our music publishing clients that they've been advised by some of the biggest music services out there that although they have direct licenses currently in place with the music publishing companies, that they're going to be moving over starting January 1 to the blanket license. So I think that's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably worth clarifying. The law allows for a digital service to enter into a direct voluntary license with a publisher. That is allowable under the law. There's still all kinds of reporting requirements that still involve the MLC being, in the mix. I'll just simplify it like that, in the mix. But those kinds of licenses are allowable. And I think recently Apple made a statement about a public release about an intention to move some things over. So yeah, it's people are leaning into the MLC, which is a great thing.
That is a great thing, and I believe that the resources that the MLC has, the statues that have been erected to give them power and teeth, is going to assist a lot of songwriters to get their stuff right, and small publishers too. If you're a small publisher, let's say you have a catalog of 50, 100 songs, and you've been dealing with things, if you get something that's popular, especially, it could be daunting. There's a lot of work that goes into administering catalogs. So I think the MLC being present and on the scene changes the game. And this, to me, this is the biggest change in copyright law in the last 40, 50 years. And if anybody can disagree with that, I'd like to hear them tell me what's better.
There's the Classics Act part of it, where
right,
giving some copyright protection to pre-February 15, 1972 recordings, sound recordings, which is part of the Music Modernization Act, and I think goes a long way towards settling everyone's concerns about whether those types of recordings are actually protected.
Yeah, that's a big deal too.
Yeah.
Especially if you are fortunate enough to deal in the area of, let's say you're lucky enough to get a title placed in a play or something, and those grand rights pay very well. And if you don't have any protections under the law, it's almost impossible to enforce them. And I hear of those types of stories all the time. So having that as part of the MMA overall, I believe is one of the better things too. But to me, the MLC is still the icing on the cake.
I hear you.
Okay, so Maddie, I hope you have a great holiday. Happy holiday today, and
thank you.
And Serona. I'm jealous because it's cold here in New Jersey today, and you're in Miami. Young Maddie.
Yeah, we're in the 70s today.
Right. I don't know what you're doing for the holidays. You going to Georgia, or you staying put, but whatever you do, be safe. You guys, we live in perilous times. We've got about less than 10 minutes to go. I don't see any questions, and I believe we've covered this well, folks. I believe that everyone should go to the MLC. The attorneys that are on here now, go to the MLC.com and get yourself familiar. Make sure your clients understand what's available to them, and watch this space. Southern University Law Center is going to be a leader in this space. It is our intention on bringing more series like these on all of the issues regarding copyrights. And it's not just music. We're going to be talking about film, television. You're going to see a lot more happening in 2021. 2021 has to be a better year than 2020. But let us pray.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood, all that. So let's kind of wrap it up. Anybody have anything they want to add to this? Maddie, anything you want to add?
Keep listening to music to cope through the pandemic. And if there are any songwriters or artists who are tuned in to this webinar, keep at it. We need you. Music is a great thing for everybody.
Yes,
and
it is.
James, thanks again for having us here, and thank you to Southern University. And
yes,
Serona and Jackie, it's been fun. Thank you.
And make sure you guys listen to some blues this weekend. Listen to some BB King. I say that very selfishly, but listen to some BB King is good for your soul.
For sure. I just want to jump in and say also thank you to the Southern University Law Center and to Serona, James, and Matt. I think, these types of forums are very important. Mostly, being a young lawyer myself and, entering the music business, 4 or so years ago, is a very confusing business where there are just so many buckets of rights and so many different parties with their hands in the bucket or the mini buckets. And so trying to understand and get a grasp of how all these parties are related, but not, taking each other's money at the same time, and how this all works out is quite a task. And is, coming to events like this, where you're able to break down, from the problem solution point of view about why things are as they are, kind of helps to explain to people with the same sort of mindset as I had when I came in. It's like, what is going on? And so I think this is a great type of forum to put that type of information out there and to make people more knowledgeable so that they can act and, as you say, connect to collect.
Connect to collect. That is the term of the day. And I hope that the songwriters and the young attorneys take that to heart, take advantage, do the right thing. And those labels and publishers who may be listening, just know you guys, we should share the wealth. We get more when we give. And they're not giving anything, trust. It's been earned by the creativity of the songwriters. So let us pay the songwriters. The songwriters are the lifeblood of the industry. Mr. Music Publisher is my company, and it all begins with a song is my catch line. I've been saying it for over 30 years. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, where I saw a lot of great music start. I went to Northern High School where Smokey Robinson attended, and the first group I ever saw perform live as a kid was a group called the Floaters, who lived down the street from me. And I remember those guys would have done anything for free. They would have the artist will do it for free. The songwriter will write a song for free. But if they do it for free and they can't eat, then we don't get the benefit of their great talent. So let's pay the songwriter, let's pay the artist, let's do the right thing. It's a great industry, and it's growing every day. You know that. The money is bananas. I don't know if you guys been watching it recently, but the money's crazy. So we got to spread it out. Thank you to the MLC. Thank you to Serona. Thank you to young Jackie.
Thank
You're the
you.
best. I appreciate you, Maddie. We'll be talking soon. And that's it. We're done. Don't forget, tune in to Southern University. We're going to be here. The Southern University Law Center is going to be doing great things in 2021 in this space. All the best, people.